You grab your daily coffee for an energy boost, right? But what if that same cup could be pushing you dangerously close to a caffeine overdose?
Oh, an overdose. That sounds a bit intense.
Well, it might be more common than you think. In this deep dive, we're going to uncover the truth about those caffeine levels in coffee and how easily we could be exceeding those daily limits.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We're diving into a research study straight from Poland, published just last month in the journal Nutrients.
So, fresh off the press.
Yep, and let me tell you, it's pretty eye-opening. They analyzed hundreds of coffee samples, both homemade and from commercial shops,
Mhm.
like bakeries, petrol stations, restaurants.
Oh, and of course, those big coffee chains we all love.
Exactly.
I'm already curious to see what they found. We often think about a cup of coffee as being pretty standard in terms of caffeine.
Right. Like a cup is a cup, right?
But this study might actually expose just how different those levels can be depending on where you get your coffee and how it's made.
So, spill the beans. What kind of caffeine levels are we talking about here?
Well, the lowest amount they found in a single serving was just 12.8 milligrams,
Wow, that's practically decaf.
pretty much. But on the other end of the spectrum, the highest caffeine level they measured in a single serving was a whopping 309.4 milligrams.
Whoa, hold on. That's almost a tenfold difference.
Yeah, it's a huge range.
I'm guessing that monster cup wasn't homemade.
You guessed it.
Yeah.
One of the big surprises here was the difference between homemade coffee and what they called takeaway coffee. Essentially anything you'd buy from a shop.
Okay, makes sense.
Takeaway coffees had, on average, get this, 3 times more caffeine than those homemade brews.
Wow, 3 times. That's not just a little bit stronger.
Nope, not at all. It's a significant difference for sure.
I've always wondered why I feel so much more jittery after a coffee shop latte compared to my homebrewed coffee.
Maybe this explains it.
Is it all about the beans? Like, are they using some supercharged caffeine beans in those coffee shops?
Well, the beans themselves definitely matter, but it's not the whole story.
What else is going on then?
The brewing methods used in many coffee shops can extract more caffeine from the beans.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just the beans themselves.
Right. Think about finer grinds, longer brewing times, and even the specific type of coffee maker.
I see. So all those fancy techniques they use impact how much caffeine ends up in your cup.
Exactly.
It's like those coffee shop baristas are caffeine extraction ninjas.
Huh?
And I'm over here at home making like a gentle caffeine infusion.
Right.
Okay, so takeaway coffee is generally much stronger, but which type takes the crown for caffeine king?
Well, of all the coffee varieties they tested, the Americano
Really?
had the highest average caffeine content, around 143 milligrams per serving.
Interesting. I always thought espresso would be the strongest. Those tiny cups pack quite a punch.
Yeah, espresso does have a higher concentration of caffeine, but you're drinking a much smaller volume.
Oh, right. So the total caffeine content is less than a larger Americano.
Exactly. It's about the total amount, not just the concentration.
Okay, that makes sense.
After the Americano, the next highest were cappuccinos, then cafe lattes.
And then finally, those espressos.
Yep.
Okay, so where does homemade coffee fit into all of this?
Well, homemade coffee was consistently the lowest in caffeine.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Ground coffee brewed at home averaged just 23 milligrams of caffeine per serving.
That's way less than that Americano average.
Right. It's less than a fifth.
Wow. So maybe we don't need to worry so much about those home brews keeping us up at night.
Maybe not.
It's those takeaway coffees that are the real caffeine culprits.
Seems like it.
But what does this all mean for those popular recommendations about how much coffee is good for you per day?
Oh, you mean that whole 3 to 5 cups for potential health benefits idea?
Yeah, exactly. Does the study change anything about that?
It might. One thing the study found was that 75 milligrams of caffeine is roughly the minimum needed for a noticeable alertness boost.
Makes sense. So there's a level where coffee actually starts working as that pick-me-up.
Exactly. Anything less than that. And you might as well stick with decaf if you're looking for a boost.
Right. But isn't there also an upper limit to how much caffeine we should have at once?
There is. Generally, 200 milligrams is considered the recommended limit for a single dose.
So ideally, you want to be somewhere between those two numbers, that 75 to 200 milligram sweet spot,
Yeah, that's the goal.
for that perfect balance of alertness and safety. But I'm guessing not all coffees fall into that ideal zone.
You're right. They found that 74% of Americanos fell within those ideal limits.
Okay, not bad.
But here's the thing. None of the homemade ground coffees they tested even reached that 75 milligram threshold.
Wow. So even if you have a few cups of homemade coffee, you're probably still well below the daily limit,
Most likely, yeah.
which is what, 400 milligrams, right?
Yep.
Okay. But what about those people who drink way more than 3 to 5 cups a day, especially if they're drinking those high caffeine takeaway coffees?
Right, right. That's where things get tricky.
What did they find about that?
Well, they found that if you were sticking to just one type of coffee throughout the day and going by their average caffeine level,
Yeah.
drinking 3 cups of Americano would put you slightly over that daily 400 milligram limit.
Oh, wow.
And if you bump that up to 5 cups of Americano, cappuccino, or even cafe latte,
Yeah.
you'd be way over the recommended daily amount.
Okay, so it's not just the type of coffee, but also how much you're drinking.
I found both.
And those are just averages, right?
Exactly. Some coffees were much stronger than others.
Meaning you could hit that 400 milligram limit much faster than you think.
For sure.
While going over that 200 milligram single dose limit was rare, almost 20% of Americanos did.
Yikes.
And think about those maximum caffeine levels they found. 3 cups of certain takeaway coffees, not just Americanos, but also cappuccinos, lattes, even some espressos could put you over the daily limit.
That's a lot to consider.
This is making me completely rethink my coffee habits. I had no idea.
It's eye-opening for sure.
And based on those maximum levels, having 5 cups of almost any type of coffee would probably mean too much caffeine.
Yeah, it adds up quickly.
This is important for those die-hard coffee drinkers who think 5 cups is just part of their routine.
Right. It might be time to reassess.
So those general recommendations about coffee consumption just aren't enough.
I think we need to be more aware of what's actually in our cups.
Exactly. We need to get specific about our coffee choices.
I agree.
But before we swear off coffee forever, let's take a moment to process all this caffeine data and then come back and discuss what it all means for us as coffee lovers.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about caffeine levels in coffee.
From the shockingly high to the surprisingly low, for sure.
Yeah. So what does this all mean for the average coffee drinker, like me?
Right.
If we can't really rely on those traditional cups per day recommendations, what should we be doing instead?
I think the big thing here is that those caffeine levels can vary so much. And those variations can really have a big impact on how much caffeine we're actually getting.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes you wonder if coffee shops should start listing caffeine content.
Oh, like on the menu?
Yeah. Right there next to all the other nutritional information.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Wouldn't it? Imagine seeing the approximate caffeine levels.
Yeah.
Right next to the calories and sugar.
Right. That would be a total game changer.
Totally.
It would give people so much more control over their choices.
Yeah.
People could choose their coffee based on their preferences or tolerance.
Exactly.
But until that happens,
Right.
what can we do to be more mindful about how much caffeine we're drinking?
Well, awareness is a great first step.
Yeah.
It's easy to get into the habit of thinking about coffee in terms of cups
Oh, definitely.
rather than the actual caffeine content.
Right.
But like we've seen, a cup of coffee can be a really inconsistent measure
So true.
depending on where you get it and how it's made.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a large Americano at one coffee shop might have the same amount of caffeine as 2 or 3 cups at another place.
Oh, totally. And don't forget about those homemade brews.
Right?
They're often way lower in caffeine compared to takeaway coffees.
Yeah, that's such an important point.
It really makes you think about serving sizes and brewing methods.
For sure.
So it's not just about the number of cups. It's about all these other factors, too.
Exactly. I think this study also pushes us to move beyond those really general recommendations about how much coffee to drink.
I see what you mean.
We need to start thinking about our coffee choices in a more personalized way.
I like that. More personalized.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from what we've learned so far?
For me, it's realizing that I need to be much more mindful about the type of coffee I'm drinking and how much I'm having.
Yeah.
I can't just assume that all coffees are created equal when it comes to caffeine,
No, definitely not.
especially when you consider all the things that can affect those levels.
Yeah, what kinds of things are you thinking of?
Well, like the type of beans, the grind size, the brewing time, even the type of coffee maker.
Oh yeah, all those factors can make a big difference.
Right. It's fascinating.
It is. Think about grind size for a second.
Okay.
A finer grind means more the coffee bean's surface area is exposed to the water.
Oh, I see.
And that means more caffeine can be extracted.
Right.
So the grind size can really change the caffeine level.
And the brewing time, too, right?
Absolutely. The longer the grounds are in contact with water, the more caffeine is released.
Okay, so grind size brewing time, and then you have different brewing methods too.
You got it. Some methods, like the French press,
Yeah.
are known for making stronger coffee with more caffeine
Right.
compared to drip coffee makers, which usually have less.
It's like this whole new level of coffee knowledge.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
I'm starting to see my daily cup in a whole new light.
I like that.
A much more informed and caffeine-conscious light.
That's the goal.
This study has really made me want to be a more informed coffee drinker.
Me too.
It's not just about enjoying those delicious coffee creations.
Right.
It's also about making choices that are good for us.
Exactly. Choices that match our own preferences and health goals.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of health,
Yeah.
I can't help but think about all those other compounds in coffee.
You mean the ones that have been linked to all those health benefits?
Yeah, like those antioxidants and polyphenols.
Right. Coffee isn't just about the caffeine.
Right. It's almost like we've been so focused on the caffeine
Yes.
that we forgot about those other amazing compounds.
It's true.
You know, the ones that researchers are so excited about.
Exactly.
So does all this focus on caffeine mean we're missing the bigger picture
That's such a good question.
when it comes to coffee and our health? I mean,
I know. This study was all about caffeine for safety reasons,
right.
but it does bring up something really important.
What's that?
What about all those other good things in coffee?
Right. Do you get those even if you drink coffee with really low caffeine?
Like those homemade brews.
Exactly. Are we missing out on those potential health benefits?
If we choose those low caffeine coffees, I mean.
Yeah. Or are those benefits totally separate from the caffeine content?
It's like a big coffee mystery waiting to be solved.
I love it. A coffee mystery.
Maybe we need a whole other deep dive.
To find those answers.
Oh, man.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about for now.
Or sip on, you could say.
Haha, exactly. It
Yeah.
really makes you wonder, right?
About,
If we're missing out on some of those health benefits if we choose a low caffeine coffee,
oh, yeah.
like those homemade brews we talked about.
Yeah, it's definitely a question worth exploring.
Right.
There's been so much research lately about those other compounds in coffee.
Besides the caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that might actually be good for us.
Yeah, like what kinds of things?
Well, some studies show they could be linked to better heart health
Okay.
and a lower risk of certain diseases,
Wow.
even better brain function,
It's amazing.
isn't it? All those potential benefits packed into our coffee.
It's true. And we've been so focused on the caffeine part
Right.
that we might not have given enough attention to these other amazing compounds.
That researchers are getting so excited about.
Exactly.
It's like we've been looking at just one piece of the puzzle
Yeah.
when there's this whole other picture to see.
So do you think some of those benefits might be lost if we just focus on lowering the caffeine?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Right.
We know that decaf coffee can have some health benefits,
Okay. Yeah,
but we don't really know for sure if they're the same as regular coffee.
that makes sense. So the big question is, does caffeine itself play a role in unlocking those other benefits?
Or are those benefits completely separate from the caffeine?
Yeah, that's what we need to figure out.
Right. Imagine if there was research that looked at this more closely.
Looking at caffeine levels and all those other compounds.
Yeah. Maybe we'd find that different types of coffee or brewing methods
Yeah,
actually offer different combinations of benefits.
that's a cool idea. We could actually choose our coffee based on specific health benefits.
Right, like I'll have the heart-healthy Americano.
With a side of cognitive boost, please.
Exactly.
That's like the future of coffee personalized just for you.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Until then, I think we need to keep learning about caffeine
Right.
and try to choose coffees that not only give us that energy boost,
Yeah.
but also might have some of those other health perks too.
I think that's great advice. Be curious, be informed,
Yeah.
and enjoy your coffee.
Well said. And remember, everybody's different.
Right.
So it's all about finding what works best for you.
And your own health goals.
We've learned so much today
We have.
about how different those caffeine levels can be.
Yeah.
Those old recommendations about how much coffee to drink just don't apply anymore.
Nope. We need to be smarter about it.
We need to be informed coffee drinkers.
Exactly.
That wraps up another deep dive.
It was fun.
We hope you enjoyed exploring the world of coffee and caffeine with us.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, happy sipping.